According to a recent survey conducted by Standard & Poor's, it discovered that only 57% of Americans are financially literate and know how to manage their money. Meanwhile, according to CNBC, 73% of Americans don't regularly follow a budget to manage their money. Luke Tatum is the best-selling author of Between the Lies: How to Reclaim Your Future from the Banks and Wall Street. He helps people to learn how they can escape the rat race and become their own bankers. His company, Perfect Spiral Capital, is a completely unconventional financial firm. Because you see, Tatum believes in the power of social capital and doesn't believe that you need to separate business, pleasure, and building sustainable relationships. One of his big visions in life is to create a world that's more financially independent and economically smart. Tatum strongly believes that we ought to educate ourselves on the educational aspect of economics to arm ourselves with the knowledge to become financially self-sufficient so that we can diversify how we spend and save our money. He shows people the value and benefit of investing in life insurance and how it can help you set up for a profitable financial future. And Tatum took some time out deep in the heart of Arkansas to join me this week to have a conversation about the banks, Wall Street, financial smarts, and so much more. So without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Absolutely. So, Luke, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. I'll wish you a happy Thursday, and it's delightful to see you this afternoon. Thanks for a few minutes, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Now, Luke, you tell me that you help people escape the rat race by showing them that they can be their own banker. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about all the great work that you do.
Sure thing, sure thing. So, Kevin, my company is called Perfect Spiral Capital. We do one thing only. That is empower people to become their own bankers. Well, what does that mean? That means utilizing mutually owned, dividend participating whole life insurance policies to store and grow your wealth before you put it somewhere else. So this is kind of the foundation of someone's financial life once they understand and implement the system. And, you know, I outline this in my book and all these things as well, of course, but it's just all about controlling the banking function in your life, which is a very confusing thing. People don't know what that means when you say it, you know, but you go to a bank and you most people finance things that they buy, right? They go to a bank for a car loan. They go to a bank for a mortgage. They go to a bank to finance a home renovation project. Any of those kind of things, large, irregular expenses in their lives, you finance them. You pay interest to somebody else. So all we're doing is teaching people that they can stop paying somebody else that interest rate. They can pay an interest rate to an entity that they own and control, and therefore kind of cut out the middleman, so to speak, and stop giving all their money to the banks. As so that's the really short version.
Yeah, so let's dive into a bit of a longer version. I know you wrote a book all about this stuff, and I'm wondering if you could tell me about the book, why you decided to write it, and what you hope people get from reading it, my friend.
Sure thing, sure thing. So the book, it's called Between the Lies: How to Reclaim Your Future from the Banks and Wall Street. It is available on Amazon. You can also just go to betweenthelliesbook.com and grab a copy. The Kindle version is 99 cents. So it's not something I make money on, really. It's just I'm trying to get the message out there. But the idea of the book is, first of all, it's split into two parts. So the first half of the book is talking about the various issues in the banking and investment world. There are things that people believe about banking and people believe about Wall Street, and they're just not quite true. And so it's kind of looking at those a little bit more closely, analyzing some of what's behind those systems. And from there, I talk about solutions. So I have a 5-step system called the Truth Blueprint, which I help walk people through. That's what my company does. And one of those things is utilizing the dividend-paying whole life insurance contracts, like we talked about. It's something called the infinite banking concept, which some people may have heard of before and may have heard of it talked about in a negative way. But it's a very, very, very powerful tool. And it's something that even banks utilize. They have plenty of money in dividend-paying whole life insurance contracts. So that is really, I mean, the message of the book, to answer your question directly, Kevin, the message is that you don't have to depend on the mutual fund system and the banking system and all of these entities to kind of take control of your life. Like, you can live relatively free of those and make money by doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm fascinated to ask you, what does it mean to you to be financially literate or savvy in today's America?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I would say if there's one lesson that people could learn, it is that there is always an interest rate with everything that you do. I'm not telling you to go take a statistics class, but even if you save up for something and pay cash, you're giving up the opportunity cost. You're giving up opportunity with that money. If you save up $10,000 and buy a used car, you have the car, but not the money. You can't invest that money and earn a rate of return elsewhere because you got the car, right? So you are always trading future earnings for things. And there is one way and one way only to kind of do both at the same time. That is to utilize the oldest financial tool that there is, which is, other than money itself, it's the dividend paying whole life insurance contract. So that's kind of the idea. It predates the income tax. It predates all these things. A very, very old method of financing things. But in order to get it, in order to understand why to do that, you have to understand that you're paying interest no matter what. The question is, who gets the interest payment? And if that can be, your bank, quote unquote bank, then you stand to profit from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Luke, I know you live in the deep in the heart of Arkansas, my friend, and you call yourself a homesteader. I know you homeschool your kids, and you also believe in great individual liberty and community and self-reliance. So I'm wondering why those things are so important to you, and why you adopt them as principles in your life.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's a great question. Part of it is just my temperament, I suppose. So that'd be a cop-out answer. But I really like the idea. I guess I get a lot of fulfillment in my own life from kind of getting to choose my own destiny. I don't mind making mistakes. I don't mind paying the price for those mistakes. I've certainly made plenty, but it's my decision. I bear the fruits of, my decisions. And I like seeing other people get into that mindset as well. A lot of people are kind of in this, we talked about the rat race at the very first question, right? But they're in this sort of this predetermined path in life. You go to school for a certain number of years. Maybe you go to back to school. You get a college degree. You go get a job. It's 9 to 5 or what have you, and you kind of follow this path in life. And I just resonate well with people that are like me, that don't mind doing things the non-standard way and kind of jumping off ship. And so we homeschool for the same reason that we homestead, for the same reason that we do this non-standard financial approach, right? It's our decision. We have control and flexibility and options, and we get to choose what's happening in our life in a way that a lot of people can't. That's why we tell people to be debt-free, because you have all the options on the table, right? And I love meeting people. I love developing a sense of community. I like making friends with people I can count on and getting to know them. And, I tell my team, go make friends with people and become the best friend that you possibly can be to those people. And that is the way that you should behave in the world, right? And so that's the community thing, that's the homesteading thing, the homeschooling. It's all tied together, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. Building social capital is important, isn't it?
Yep, it is.
Absolutely. And look, I asked you earlier about being financially savvy, and you just finished telling me about being debt-free. So tell me about establishing financial independence and the overall improvement of your quality of life that you think you can gain if you can gain financial independence.
Sure. I mean, flexibility, options, and control, right? It's sort of what I was just talking about. So perfect transition there. If this is something I wrote in my book too, but I've sat down at the closing table for buying a house 2 times. The first time we were getting a mortgage, and the second time we were paying cash. And it's a completely different experience. When you sit down to a closing table for a real estate deal and you have cash, if you're just paying for it outright, you don't need the bank's permission to get the loan, right? It doesn't matter. If you're making the decision, you're good. And so it's just when you see something that not everyone else sees, if you see a really cool investment opportunity, if you see a house that you can, tear down to the studs and rebuild to be the perfect house for you and your family, the bank doesn't necessarily see that. If you see it, you can do it as long as you've taken the appropriate steps and you've kind of developed, your own capital position to be able to do these things. And so, to the extent that you don't want to have to ask permission for the things you want to do in life, that's the extent to which you should focus on financial freedom. And maybe that's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, absolutely. And, look, a lot of Americans aren't savvy when it comes to managing their money. There aren't a lot of people who place a high priority on saving for retirement in today's 21st century. So tell me, how can Americans and people in general improve their relationship with money, in your opinion?
Sure. I would say, and this is maybe going to be out of left field, but I would say read an economics book. Okay. I'm not, it's not to say that people are going to view that as an exciting option. If you're thinking about what book to read, maybe you'd rather read some cool, mystery novel or something. But, read Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. It's not that long. It's great. There are some really great writers that have written on economic topics. And specifically, I'm talking about Austrian economics. And so what I would call true economics. It's understanding what is really going on truthfully, and it's not making a profit and loss chart. It's not talking about supply and demand curves and these kind of things. It's not what you got in a high school econ course if you had to take that. It's just logic. It's just understanding how an economy works. And if you read one economics book and like one history book, I really believe you can predict the future to at least some extent. You'll know what's coming. You'll know what's coming way before other people do if you have a little bit of grounding in there. And so, Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt is an awesome starting point. Anything by Murray Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises. There's some wonderful, wonderful writers out there. And I'll give it a shout out to the Mises Institute. It's my favorite nonprofit. So mises.org. There's more free material on there than you could ever read in your lifetime. and it's wonderful.
Well, that's terrific. And, Luke, I'm also curious to ask you about the concept of goal setting, mindset, psychology, and how you think those three things are interconnected when we talk about success. So goal setting, psychology, and mindset, how do you think those things are interconnected?
Sure. Yeah. I was in a course. I signed up for this. It's not something I had to take for a class or what have you, but there's a course from the Pacific Institute that I signed up for a few years ago. And that is something that will totally revolutionize your understanding of how the brain works. So just like I'm talking about how the economy works, you should learn some lessons on those things. It'll open your eyes. I'm talking about the same thing here. Understand how your brain works. What does your brain do with the information that comes into it? Why does it do those things? How can you affect those things? All of that is very, very interconnected. If you don't know how your brain works, how can you set goals that you're going to follow through on? Right? So learn those lessons and practice. And like I used to think that daily affirmations were not a powerful tool. I'd tried them a couple of different times really earnestly. And I was writing things down and I was reciting them and I woke up, you've heard business coaches and people talk about these things and I got nothing out of it. I just thought this is a waste of my time. Well, turns out that's not the case, that they're really, really powerful if you do it the right way. And so it's just, delving a little deeper. It's any subject, Kevin. If you start out with a surface level understanding and you start to make some decisions about how you feel about it, you'll probably get the wrong conclusions. If you dive in a little deeper, read one or two books. They say if you read 3 books on a topic, you're an expert compared to everyone else. And so read 3 books on any topic that interests you or that would benefit your life and see where you get. It's go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say knowledge is power, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Luke, when we look at the world today, and certainly coming out of COVID, I think people are getting smarter on planning for uncertainty in all aspects of their life. But how do you think we can better do that from a financial perspective? So if something like COVID ever happens again or an uncertain event happens in our life, how can we be financially sustainable to absorb something like that?
Sure. It's a really, really important question, and I was really glad that you're asking this. The thing I would say is, and this is something I harp on a lot in my book, it's the distinction between saving and investing. A lot of people talk about how they're saving for the future, right? They've got a deduction from their paycheck every 2 weeks or every month that's going into their 401k plan or what have you. That's not saving. That's an investment. You're buying into mutual funds or an ETF or whatever it is that your 401k plan is going into. That's investing, and you can't touch the money without stiff penalties for a long time. It's not really there for you to tap into if the government shuts down the economy for 2 years or longer. It's there for you to retire, at least ostensibly. And so what do you do instead? Well, you should save money. You should put money in an environment where you have access to it. You know how much is there. It's going up in value, preferably. And you've got contractual rights. Unfortunately, Kevin, that does not describe a bank. We've seen some of these things going on recently. You're talking about uncertainty. Well, there's banks that have been defaulting recently. So what does that mean? Well, it means maybe your money's not as safe as you think it is. The sad truth is that the money's not there. The United States banking system is a fractional reserve banking system. So there's only ever a small percentage of the money that you think is there actually on deposit. And that's not a great environment if you're in a horrible situation like the COVID-19 situation where, okay, your business has to close. And they said it was for 2 weeks, but then it was months and then it was years, right? That's very, very hard to weather if you don't have money in a place that is contractually required to give it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke, before I move on to some more societal questions, my last financial question for you has to do with the state of the economy today. When we look at unemployment, it is lower than it's ever been before, but there are people that are choosing to stay at home because they've just gotten used to the environment and they don't want to re-enter the workforce. So I'm curious to ask you about your view on the current state of the economy, what you like, what you don't like, and what you think needs to be sort of adjusted to be more profitable for more people.
Sure. Yeah. When we talk about big economic questions like that, of course, I've talked about some economics books and everything already, so I won't harp on that. But the thing to really focus on is just the fundamentals, and so that's where the name of my book came from. It took me a long time to name it, but Between the Lies, you're kind of given this limited view of the world and expected to stay in there, stay in your lane kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And the real truth of what's going on is outside of that. And so you have to be willing to look outside and see the underlying truth, which is that there's way more money on paper than there actually is, right? And money is created out of thin air in the United States and in Canada and in, virtually every major economic country in the world. They have central banks, and central banks generate money out of nothing. So what does that do? Well, let's talk about a pizza. If you have a pizza and you slice it into 6 pieces, then you still have the same amount of pizza. Well, if you slice it into 20 pieces, you still have the same amount of pizza, but each piece is worth less. Mm-hmm. That is what happens with our economy. You make more dollars, each dollar is worth less money. And that's, people talk about inflation, okay? And what are we going to do to fight inflation? You cannot fight inflation by printing more money and sending people stimulus checks. And, this is in my view here, but because you're making more dollars, they're generating money out of nothing, and it waters down the supply of money that people already have. So what you should do instead, we should restrict the amount of total dollars that exist. We should not have central banking. And if I was going to fix one thing, that would be it. It would be to eliminate the power of the Federal Reserve and other similar central banks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Luke, I don't know if you knew this, but we're coming up on the end of National Disability Awareness Month, my friend. And one way I think we can diversify the economy is by infusing more folks with disabilities into the workforce because I truly believe it's a competitive advantage. So tell me about the financial benefits that you think infusing folks with disabilities in the workforce can provide.
Sure, gosh, absolutely. And this is a subject that is very dear to me. Personally, my son has autism, and he's 12 years old, and so he's not in the workforce right now. But the having people in the workforce, like just in general, is a great thing. If someone is willing to work, if they're willing to do something to provide for themselves, provide for others, to contribute to the overall economy, like that's a wonderful thing. And I don't think there should be barriers in the way of that. I'm always, always, always in favor of removing barriers, removing things that prevent people from getting things done. This is there's a lot of talk about minimum wage laws that can prevent certain people from being able to do something they would like to do. Right? It's a price at which labor is, anything under that is illegal. is what it is. It's a restriction. It's not a freedom. And so I believe in just giving more people access to doing what they would like to do. And I mean, there's a wonderful organization, since we're talking about it, called Soap Hope that focuses on helping to train people with disabilities and getting them into the workforce, proper. They also employ them while they're working on developing skills to get into the workforce. And, that's just wonderful. I love efforts like that. And I didn't know it was this month, so I'm glad you brought that to my attention. We are coming up on the end, though.
Yeah, and it's personal to myself as well, Lou,
Yeah.
because I don't know if you read up on me, but I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally, and coincidentally, it's also the end of Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month. So there's a connection there, too. So I wanted your thoughts there as well. And thank you for sharing. I asked you earlier about financial sort of ways that we can move forward. And, look, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast was I looked at the world and I said to myself, there's got to be more vehicles to bring us closer together instead of tearing us apart. So when you look at society today and the way the world is going, I'm curious, what gives you the most hope for the future, and what, from a societal perspective, frustrates you the most, and something you want to see fixed?
Sure. Yeah. I'm always really inspired by people taking individual responsibility for things, and kind of mastering themselves, and then going out and improving the society immediately around them, their immediate community, and then making it bigger and kind of continuing to grow from there. You have, I mean, it's almost silly to give an example because there's so many, but anytime you see a story like that, that always just gets me fired up. I love it when people can focus on improving themselves to the point that they can improve others. And I maybe that's one of my big takeaways just in life generally is that change has to start at the individual level, right? If you want to provide for yourself, great, get good at that. You want to provide for your family next, great, do that. And that's how the world changes. If you want to change the world, you have to change yourself before you can do that. And I believe that, in my core. So what would I like to see different in the world? I would like to see more people homeschooling, more people, teaching, improving yourself first. I would like to see more messages like, people. There are people out there in the world right now giving a message like that, and they're getting a lot of traction because I think the world is very starving for that message. There's been a lot of collective responsibility kind of conversations out there, and it tends to get people caught up in something that they don't have any influence on. Right? They need to learn more about themselves, clean up their own heads, so to speak, and understand, how they fit into the world before they go out there and start trying to change things. So that's not necessarily a policy decision. It's just an individual family decision. It's saying, hey, maybe we should be the most attentive and the most focused on, educating our own children, right? It's an individual household level. It's a grassroots thing. It's a totally grassroots idea. And so, you won't see me out there really campaigning for like political causes and things, because that's not where I see the world changing for the better. It's at the you and me level.
Well, it all starts with us, and we're the ones that vote the politicians in anyway, right? So it all starts at the grassroots level to begin with, right?
Right, right.
Absolutely. And Luke, I know that family is important to you. So I'm curious, how do you think today's parents can be more present in their children's life? And what does that mean to you to maximize personal and professional potential?
Okay. So I would say, really and truly, I feel like maybe I'm repeating myself, but the education piece is so important. If a lot of parents don't think that they can homeschool because they aren't experts in every area, and they've got to buy all these expensive curricula, and they've got to, spend all of their time every day working on education and all that. And I just don't believe that. My son is so motivated to improve himself, and he loves learning stuff. And you say, hey, you want to work on some math, and he will drop whatever he's doing and he will run to go do some math. It's just awesome. And I'm not saying every kid is the same. That's not what I mean. But kids like to learn. If you focus on what they are interested in learning about, if your kid doesn't care about space, don't try to drill space into their head for a while. Maybe come back to it after a year or two, that kind of thing. It's there's a give and a take, and every individual person is unique, and kids are unique too, and they have their own personalities, and they don't necessarily care about the same things that you care about or want them to care about. So focus on what they are interested in, let them kind of follow their passion a little bit. And you'll have such a great relationship with your kids if you do that, because you're helping facilitate them developing themselves, instead of being an adversary that says, you must learn this or you're behind. We don't believe in you're behind for your age. That's not a conversation we have. And so I would tell you, kind of let go of some of those frameworks, and just focus on, being in a good relationship with your child's education. So to me, that's the most important thing. And I am so sorry, Kevin, I forgot the second part of your question.
Yeah, I'm just curious to ask you about maximizing personal and professional potential and what that means to you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. A friend of mine, actually the guy who wrote the introduction for my book, he talks about how he learned from a mentor of his to embrace this kind of idea of, I'm always at work, but I'm always on vacation. I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship, in kind of building your own business and doing your own thing. And you're hearing that as I've been talking. I'm always talking about individuals, but the idea of doing things like that, of kind of embracing and going and forging your own path is amazing, because I get to go do things that I want to do anyway, and I get to be around people that I want to be around anyway, and I'm doing that in a professional context, right? So a lot of my clients are really good friends, a lot of my friends are clients, and that's how it should be. I don't believe in separating business and personal lives. If somebody really hates some of the core beliefs that I stand for, I probably shouldn't be doing business with them, right? We don't necessarily need to go down that path just because I want to make some money. I believe in helping people who are like-minded, right? And who resonate with each other. I think that's how you build community. It's how you build all of these other things. It's by finding your tribe, so to speak. I don't normally use that term, but but that kind of a thing. And so if you do that, I mean, you will be seen as an expert, and you'll be seen as an expert by people who you care about seeing you as an expert, right? So it's just all of these things should work together. It's not that you're working against the world. The world should be kind of working, with you to achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke, in the few minutes I have left with you, I'm curious to also ask you about budgeting and how important it is for families to really structure their finances so that they have money to pay their bills, but also money to always, if they want to, have some external expenses as well. So, how important is budgeting in your view?
Budgeting is very, very important. I will tell you, it's a lot easier if you have a nice fat check coming in, on a reliable basis, right? You can say, okay, I make X dollars per month. Our expenses are Y dollars per month, and you just do a little bit of simple algebra and you can figure it out. But it's not that easy for everyone. And everyone has some uneven expenses that come up once a year, like a homeowner's insurance premium or paying taxes. There's different things that people have to deal with, especially if they're business owners. And so what do you do with that? Well, my wife and I, we budget every Sunday together. And we look at what do we currently have and what are we wanting to accomplish and what is our cash position, to achieve those things. We don't keep a lot of money in the bank. We shove it all into life insurance policies, like we talked about. But we keep enough in the bank to meet roughly 5 weeks of expenses into the future. So over the next 5 weeks, 5.5, 6, depending on the situation, this is what we do. We keep some money available to do what we need to do. And the rest should go into a safe, accessible location that is earning money. And so if you do that, you just end up so far ahead instead of spending money you don't have, living on credit cards, all of those other things. If you can say, okay, we can't do this right now, we can't afford it. That's a very, very, very powerful thing. And so, yes, budgeting 100%. There are wonderful platforms out there to help you budget. I help some of my clients with budgeting concerns to help them free up cash flow so they can, make the right moves and improve their financial lives. But you've got to do it on some level. If you have a steady paycheck, it's easier. But especially if you don't, you have to budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always important to be prepared, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. It is.
Absolutely. And Luke, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
Sure. Okay. Well, there's all kinds of things my wife and I talk about on this front. I know that my wife would like to see us establish a place where families can live with their kids that have disabilities. You're not giving the child into this like system. It's not an assisted living facility. It's a kind of a managed living facility for the parents and the kids to live together in, an environment with some resources. That's something that, we were just talking about that today. And so that would be a huge kind of a nonprofit enterprise that we'd love to embark upon whenever we're able to do so. I would love to leave a lot of funds to some economic education, foundations, because I think that's such a critical thing for the future of mankind, literally. And I want to make sure that I'm always doing what's right for other people and helping them to embrace, their own potential financially and otherwise. So those are my big causes, promotion of knowledge, preservation of knowledge and making, I could keep you on here for another hour, Kevin. I'm telling you that we could just keep going and going. And I love talking about these things, but those are some of our biggest initiatives that we'd like to see.
Well, knowledge is power, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Absolutely. Luke, finally tell me if people want to get connected with you personally or buy the book. What's the best way they can do that?
Sure. Yeah. So again, it's perfectspiralcapital.com is my website for my company. You can go to the booking page there, set up an initial conversation. It's no obligation. I really, literally do not harass people. If you talk to me for 30 minutes and never want to talk to me again, I'm not going to bother you. But my team, wonderful, wonderful people involved with the company. I'm blessed to be associated with all of them. And we're all standing by to, give our best advice and bring our A game every time. But the book is at betweenthelliesbook.com, betweenthelliesbook.com, or you can just search Between the Lies on Amazon and it should be the #1 result. It's got a big $ on the cover, so you can't miss it.
Well, yeah, easy marketing means that people will buy the book, right? If they
right.
can recognize the brand, it means they'll buy the book, right?
That's the hope.
Absolutely. Well, Luke, I want to really thank you for your knowledge today that you were willing to share with me about financial education, a little bit about your personal life. So your work in the space and time on my behalf this afternoon is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate it.